I had just landed after a 16-hour flight when my father looked me in the eye and told me I did not belong at my own sister's wedding. He did not raise his voice. He did not hesitate. He simply stepped in front of the entrance, blocking the doorway like I was a stranger who had wandered into the wrong place. "Only family is allowed," he said quietly. Then he added, as if it meant nothing at all, "You were not invited. My name is Rachel Monroe. I am 31 years old, and I serve as an officer in the United States Air Force. For the past 3 years, I have been stationed overseas, moving from one assignment to another, living a life built on discipline, structure, and distance. I do not come home often. So when my younger sister Olivia got married, I made sure I would be there. I paid for the flight. I cleared my schedule. I showed up. And I stood there, holding a gift I had carried across an ocean, dressed carefully for a moment I thought mattered, realizing none of it had ever been meant for me. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I just stood there, looking at the man who raised me, and understood something in a way I never had before. This was not a mistake. This was a decision. And in that moment, something inside me went completely still. Because the truth was simple, I had spent years showing up for a family that had already decided I did not belong. So let me ask you something. What would you do if the people you called family erased you without even saying your name? If that moment at the door felt sudden, it was not. It only felt that way because I had spent years ignoring everything that led up to it. In my family, roles were never spoken out loud, but they were always understood. My father was the one who made decisions. My sister Olivia was the one those decisions revolved around. And me, I was the one who made everything easier. The reliable one. The one you call when something goes wrong, when money runs short, when plans fall apart. I learned that role early. Not because anyone sat me down and explained it, but because every time I stepped in, things got smoother, quieter, less complicated for everyone else. So I kept doing it. When I was 24, I co-signed a loan for my father. He told me it would help him get back on his feet faster. When I was 28, I wired money home for what I was told was an emergency repair. Later, I found out it covered a gap in Olivia's college tuition. I never brought it up. Not once. Because in my mind, that is what family does. You help. You support. You do not keep score. But there is something people do not talk about enough. When you are always the strong one, people stop checking if you are okay. They stop asking what it costs you. They stop seeing you as someone who might need something in return to them. You become a solution, not a person, and the longer you stay in that role, the harder it becomes to notice when support quietly turns into expectation, when kindness turns into obligation, and when showing up is no longer appreciated, it is just assumed. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The pattern was never hidden. I just chose not to see it because seeing it would have meant admitting something I was not ready to face, that I was not being valued. I was being used. When Olivia called to tell me she was getting married, I was sitting alone in my apartment overseas. It was late for me, early afternoon back home. She held up her hand to the camera, smiling wide, the ring catching the light like it was something she had been waiting her whole life to show the world. I told her congratulations. And I meant it. I have always meant it when something good happened to her. That was never the problem. A few minutes into the call, my father stepped into the frame behind her. "We are keeping things simple," he said. "Small ceremony. Nothing complicated." I nodded. "Just tell me the date. I will make it work." There was a pause. Not long. Just enough to notice. "We will see what makes sense," he replied. At the time, I heard logistics. Now I know it was hesitation. 2 weeks later, he called again. His tone was different this time. More practical. More direct. "Rachel, I need a favor." That sentence had a rhythm to it, one I knew too well. "The venue needs a card on file," he explained. "So does the caterer, the florist, the photographer. Olivia does not have the credit history yet. And his finances were tied up," he said. "It is just paperwork. Your name. Your card. We will handle the payments." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the wall as he spoke. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. "Total comes to about $31,000, he said. "But that is not what you are paying. Just the deposit now. The rest will be settled after the wedding." $31,000. My name attached to it. I should have asked more questions. I should have read every detail twice. But I did not. Because this was not new. It was just bigger. And when something familiar shows up in a larger form, it is easy to mistake it for normal. So I said yes. That week, I signed everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photography. Every contract carried my name. Every responsibility pointed back to me. I told myself it was temporary, that after the wedding, everything would be settled. But there is something important people often forget. When someone says it is just temporary, what they really mean is they expect you to carry it until they do not have to. After I signed the contracts, everything about the wedding moved forward. Just not with me. At first, it was small things. Photos posted online, dress fittings, cake tastings, Olivia smiling, my father standing beside her, both of them looking completely at ease. I told myself that made sense. I was overseas. Time zones were different. Schedules were tight. Of course, I would not be involved in every detail. Then I noticed something else. There was a group chat. I found out by accident when Olivia forwarded me a message that was not meant for me. Vote on bridesmaid dresses, it said. There were names listed. Mine was not one of them. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I closed it and told myself the same thing I always did. It is not a big deal. I called her a few days later. Asked if she needed anything. We are good, she said quickly. Everything is handled. Handled. I heard that word more than once. So I called my father. Same question. Same answer. Focus on your job, he said. We have it covered here. Covered. I should have noticed how often they used that word. Covered meant there was no space for me. Covered meant decisions were already made. Covered meant I was not part of the process, just the support behind it. I never received an invitation. Not printed. Not digital. Not even a message with details. Nothing. But I told myself that did not matter. I am her sister. You do not invite your sister. You just expect her to be there. At least, that is what I believed when I booked my flight. Looking back now, I can see how carefully I avoided the truth. Because accepting it would have meant facing something uncomfortable, that I was not being included, I was being excluded quietly, consistently, and in a way that made it easy to pretend it was not happening at all. I booked the flight without thinking twice. 16 hours from Germany to the United States. One connection. A rental car waiting at the airport. A hotel 15 minutes from the venue. In total, just under $3,000 out of my own pocket. At the time, it did not feel like a cost. It felt like commitment. I packed carefully the night before I left. A navy blue dress I had picked up during a short break in Munich. Simple. Elegant. Something that felt right for the kind of moment I thought I was walking into. I wrapped Olivia's gift with the same attention. A set of kitchen knives she had mentioned once in passing months ago. Not something she asked for. Just something I remembered. The flight itself was long, but familiar. Hours of quiet. The low hum of the cabin. People sleeping, watching movies, existing in that suspended space between where they were and where they were going. Somewhere over the Atlantic. I did the math. $3,000 for the trip. $31,000 tied to my name. And still, I felt lucky to be going. That is the part that is hardest to explain. When you spend enough time being the one who gives, you start to feel grateful just to be included even when you are not. I landed on a Friday night. Checked into a small hotel. The woman at the front desk smiled when I gave my name. You here for the wedding? She asked. Big event this weekend. I nodded. Something like that. She handed me the key, still smiling. You must be close to the family. I paused. Just for a second. Yeah, I said finally. Something like that. That night, I hung my dress in the closet, placed the gift on the desk, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. I texted my father. Just checked in. What time should I be there tomorrow? He replied almost an hour later. Ceremony at 2. That was it. No welcome, no looking forward to seeing you. Just a time. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, telling myself he was busy, that weddings are stressful, that people forget things. I had made excuses for them my whole life. I just did not realize, yet this time would be different. The next day, I got ready slowly. Not because I was late, but because I wanted to be. There is something intentional about preparing for a moment you believe matters. You take your time. You make sure everything feels right. Hair. Makeup. The way the dress falls when you stand still. I wanted to look like I belonged there. Not just as a guest, but as family. The drive to the venue felt familiar. The same roads I used growing up. The same turns. The same quiet neighborhoods that had not changed, even though everything else had. When the venue came into view, it looked exactly the way I had imagined. White fences. Lights strung between trees. Guests gathering outside. Adjusting jackets, smoothing dresses, laughing in small groups. It looked perfect. I parked near the back, picked up the gift, and started walking toward the entrance. Each step steady, measured. I saw my father before he saw me, standing near the door, talking to someone I did not recognize. Straight posture, controlled presence. For a moment, he looked exactly the same. Then he looked up. Our eyes met, and something shifted. He did not smile. He did not wave. He stepped forward directly into my path. I kept walking. 10 steps, 5 until I was standing right in front of him. "Dad," I said, my voice steady. He did not return it. His eyes moved from my face to the dress to the gift in my hands, then back to me. "Rachel," he said quietly, "what are you doing here?" The question landed harder than anything else I flew in last night. I said, "I am here for Olivia's wedding." He exhaled, slowly glanced past me at the guests walking up behind us, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to leave for a second." I thought I misheard him. "What, this is not the place for you?" He said. "We kept things small, immediate family." Only I stared at him. "I am your daughter." His jaw tightened, but he did not respond to that. "Rachel," he said again, "do not make this harder than it needs to be." Behind him, the doors were open. I could see the chairs, the flowers, everything I had signed for months earlier. "I signed every contract for this wedding," I said quietly. "Every single one. This is not about money." He replied. "Then what is it about?" He did not answer. He just looked at me and said it again. "Only family is allowed." Then, like it meant nothing at all. "You were not invited." The words did not echo. They did not need to. They settled exactly where they were meant to. Final, clear, unavoidable. I stood there for a moment, holding a gift I had carried across an ocean, wearing a dress I had chosen. For a moment, I was never meant to be part of. Then I nodded once, set the gift down beside the entrance, and walked away, not because I accepted it, but because I finally understood it. I did not cry when I got back to the car. That is the part most people do not expect. They expect anger. A scene. Something loud enough to match what just happened. But I have spent years in environments where control matters more than reaction. So I sat there in silence, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes fixed forward, and let my mind do what it always does under pressure. It started putting pieces together, not in big dramatic flashes, but in small, precise moments that suddenly made sense. The pause on the phone when I said I would book my flight, the way my father said, "We will see what makes sense." The group chat. I was never part of the invitation that never came. The word "covered" repeated over and over. Again, none of it was random, none of it was accidental. It was all consistent, deliberate, planned. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes for a second. The numbers came to me easily. They always do. $3,000 for the trip, $31,000 attached to my name, and a seat at the wedding that never existed. I opened my eyes again and stared at the dashboard, trying to find something that felt different, something that would prove this was a misunderstanding, but there was nothing, because the truth was already there. I just had not said it out loud. Yet this was not bad timing. This was not stress. This was not someone forgetting. This was a decision, a clear one, and it had been made long before I ever stepped onto that plane for the first time. I stopped asking why and started seeing what was in front of me, because once you stop looking for excuses, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. And in that quiet space inside the car, with nothing left to distract me, everything finally clicked. Not all at once, but enough to know I had never been meant to walk through that door. I should have left after that. Driven back to the hotel, packed my things, put distance between me and everything that had just happened. But I did not, because something in me needed to see it clearly, not from where I thought I belonged, but from where I had been placed. Outside, I drove back toward the venue just as the sun started to lower. The parking lot was fuller now. More cars, more movement. Music drifting faintly into the air. From the outside, everything looked perfect. I parked farther away this time, where no one would notice me, and walked along the side of the building until I found a set of windows that looked into the reception hall. I stopped there just far enough to stay unseen, close enough to see everything inside. The room was exactly how I remembered from the contracts. Tables arranged neatly, white linens, soft lighting, people laughing, holding drinks, moving easily through a moment that felt effortless. And at the center of the head table, Olivia sat there, smiling, leaning into her new husband radiant exactly the way she always imagined she would be. My father stood just behind her, one hand resting lightly on the back of her chair, the other holding a glass. He looked comfortable, relaxed, like nothing was missing. A man approached him, older, well-dressed. They shook hands, spoke briefly. Then the man asked something simple. I could not hear every word, but I could read enough. How many children do you have? There was no hesitation, no pause, just the one. My father said, gesturing toward Olivia. That is my daughter. The sentence was quiet, but it landed with more force than anything he had said. At the door, I stood there, completely still, the music muted through the glass, the light from inside spilling softly into the evening, and for a moment, there was no anger, no shock, just something sharper, clearer, confirmation. I was not forgotten. I was not overlooked. I was removed deliberately, completely. And in that moment, standing outside a room I helped create, watching a life I was erased from, I understood something that changed everything. Rejection hurts, but replacement, that is what makes it final. I did not stay there long after that. I did not need to. There is a point where seeing more does not give you more clarity, it just repeats what you already know. So I turned and walked back to the car, this time without looking back. The drive to the hotel felt quieter, not because the world had changed, but because something inside me had. When I got back to the room, I did not turn on the main light, just the small lamp by the bed, enough to see, not enough to distract. I sat down at the desk and opened my laptop. The emails were still there, 4 invoices. Venue, catering, flowers, photography, each one neatly formatted, each one listing the remaining balance, each one carrying my name. I opened them slowly, reading every line, this time not as someone trying to help, but as someone trying to understand. Terms, deadlines, authorization. That word stood out, authorization. I read it again, then again. The person whose name is on the contract is responsible, but they are also the one who approves the final payment. Responsible and in control. I leaned back in the chair, letting that settle. For hours I had been thinking about what I lost, the humiliation, the rejection, the moment at the door. But now, for the first time, I saw something else. What I still had authority. It is a word I understand in my world. Authority is not emotional. It is clear, defined. You either have it or you do not. And in this situation, I did more than they expected, more than they planned for. My phone lit up on the desk, my father's name. I watched it ring once, twice, 3 times, then it stopped. A message followed. Call me. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a moment, then turned it face down, not out of anger, not out of fear, but because for the first time I was not reacting. I was deciding. The situation had not changed, but my position in it had. And that difference, that shift from emotion to clarity, from hurt to control, that was the moment everything started to turn, not in their favor, but in mine. I did not call him back that night. Not because I did not have anything to say, but because I finally understood something simple. Not every conversation deserves a response. Some deserve a decision. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that does not feel empty, just clear. I made coffee, stood by the window while it brewed, watching people in the parking lot move through their morning, normal routines, normal lives, unaffected. My phone buzzed just as I took the first sip. His name again this time. I answered. Rachel, he said immediately, his voice already tight. Where are you? At the hotel. I replied. A short pause. You left yesterday. He said yes. Another pause, longer this time. Then he shifted. The vendors are calling. He said the venue, the caterer, everyone there saying the final balance has not been authorized. I set the cup down slowly. That is correct, I said. His tone sharpened. You are the one on those contracts. That is your responsibility. I let a second pass before answering, not because I needed time, but because I wanted him to hear the comment. I am not authorizing the payment, I said. Silence, heavy. What do you mean you are not authorizing it? I mean exactly that. I am not paying $31,000 for a wedding I was not allowed to attend. His breath came out sharp. Do not twist this into something it is not. That was a misunderstanding. No, I said calmly. It was not. Another pause. You showed up without confirming. He said we had to make quick decisions. It was complicated. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. It did not seem complicated when you told people you only had one child, I said. The line went completely silent for a moment. There was nothing. Then his voice returned, lower. Now where did you hear that I was there? I replied, just not inside. And for the first time in the entire conversation, he had nothing to say. The silence did not last long. It never does when money is involved. By that afternoon, the calls started. Not to me, to them. The venue first, then the caterer, then the florist, and the photographer, each one asking the same question in different ways. Who is responsible for the final payment? And for the first time, the answer was not me. I had already contacted every vendor that morning. Clear, direct, no emotion. I am not authorizing any further charges. Please redirect all outstanding balances to the event hosts. Simple, professional, final. My phone lit up again later that day. This time, it was Olivia. Rachel, "What is going on? Dad said you are not paying the vendors. Is this some kind of mistake?" I read the message twice, looking for something else, an acknowledgement, a question about what happened at the door, anything that showed she understood there was nothing, just confusion about money. I typed my reply slowly. "There is no mistake." I stared at the screen for a moment, then added one more line, "We can talk when you are ready to talk about yesterday." I hit send. Her response came quickly, "You are making this about you." I looked at the words, let them sit, because in that moment, something became clear. She was not asking what happened, she was protecting what she needed, and what she needed was for everything to stay the same. But that was no longer possible, because when something is taken away, control, convenience, access, people show you exactly who they are, not when everything is working, but when it stops. And now it had stopped. The calls slowed down after that. Not because things were resolved, but because the focus shifted away from me. The vendors had their answers, the responsibility had been redirected, and now the situation belonged where it always should have, with them. A few days later, my phone rang again, a number I did not expect. My Aunt Linda, my father's older sister. I hesitated for a second before answering, not because I did not want to talk, but because I did not know what version of the story had reached her. "Rachel," she said, her voice steady. I heard what happened. There was no accusation in it, no judgment, just a quiet acknowledgement. I did not respond right away. I was not used to that kind of tone, not in this situation. I was not there. She continued, "But I heard enough, and what they did, that was not right." The words landed differently than anything else I had heard so far, not loud, not emotional, just clear. For the first time since all of this started, someone said it out loud, without twisting it, without minimizing it, without turning it into something else that was not right. I leaned back slightly, letting that settle, because sometimes it does not take a long conversation to change how you feel. It just takes one person who sees it the way it actually is and says it out loud. By the end of the week, everything had shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that made headlines, but in the quiet, practical way. Real consequences unfold. The vendors had followed up, payment plans were discussed, new arrangements were made. From what I heard later, it was messy, complicated, uncomfortable, exactly the kind of situation I had spent years stepping in to prevent. Only this time, I did not. My father did not call again. Not once, no messages, no attempts to explain, just silence. The same silence I used to chase, the same silence I used to fill with effort, with compromise, with yes. But now it felt different, not heavy, not confusing, just quiet. And in that quiet, there was something I had not felt in a long time: relief. I was not waiting for the next request. I was not preparing myself to fix anything. I was not trying to read between the lines. I was simply still. I went back to my routine work, training, the structure I had always relied on, but even that felt different, lighter, not because anything around me had changed, but because I had stopped carrying something that was never mine to begin with. And once you set something down like that, you realize how heavy it really was only after it is gone for a long time. I thought about that moment at the door. The way my father stood in front of me, the way his voice did not change when he told me I did not belong. At first, I believed that was the moment everything broke, but it was not. Nothing broke that day. It was revealed, something that had been there for years, under every favor, every call that started with "can you?" Every time I said yes, without asking why. I told myself I had a family, that I just needed to try harder, show up more, give a little more, be a little more understanding. But the truth was simpler than that. I was trying to earn a place in something that had already decided I did not have one. And once you see that clearly, you cannot go back to pretending you do not. I did not lose my family that day. I lost the version of myself that believed I had to keep proving I deserved one. And what replaced it was not anger, it was not regret. It was something quieter, stronger, a line, clear, steady. Mine. If you have ever been in a place where you felt like you had to give more just to be seen, where you kept showing up, hoping this time it would be different, then you already understand the story, because it is not really about a wedding or $31,000. It is about something deeper. The moment you realize your effort is not being valued, it is being expected. And there is a difference, a quiet one, but a powerful one for me. That moment came at a door I was never meant to walk through for you. It might come somewhere else, a conversation, a pattern, a feeling you have been ignoring for too long. So here is the question I want to leave you with. At what point do you stop asking for a seat and start building your own table? Take a moment and think about that. And if this story felt familiar, if even a part of it connected with you, I would like to hear from you. Share where you are listening from and tell me, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have paid, or would you have walked away? If you found value in this story, take a second to like and share. And if you want more stories like this, real situations, real decisions, quiet strength, then stay here. There is more coming.